Hello everyone, Dominic here from Esports News UK, back with our latest weekly interview of people in the UK League of Legends scene and beyond. Today I'm joined by another special guest. I always say it's a special guest because they are all special guests. Josh Furneaux. Josh, have I said your surname correctly?
That is correct.
Furneaux,
That is
I got it
correct.
right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Some of you may know him as Fern Dog, by that alias, as a well-known coach in the UK League of Legends scene. Been with lots of teams over the years. Excel Esports, loads of teams we can dive into. But Josh, you've recently... Well, first of all, thanks for joining me. Josh, how are you doing?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, no, really, really good.
Good stuff. And recently, Josh, I think the interesting thing for people is you've transitioned from coach to player agent. So, yeah, that sounds interesting. Tell us a bit about what you're doing at ICM.
Yeah, so I had a very interesting opportunity kind of come my way. Definitely wasn't something I was looking for. I had my mind very set on I'm not done with coaching yet, and there's still a lot of people I can work with, still a lot of things I can achieve. And an opportunity was thrown my way late last year. Really is just kind of preliminary thoughts, but both from their side and mine. I didn't know if it was something I'd be interested in. They didn't know if I was the right person for the job. We got into kind of more and more talks. The more I saw what they were trying to do and how serious the ICM Stellar were about moving into esports, the more of an exciting kind of proposition it was. Really now my job is very much watch loads of League of Legends, scout out the best upcoming talent, try and sign them to our agency, and I then am responsible for managing that player's career for the duration of our contract with them, which is often 2 years. I manage that player's career on an individual level from then throughout the rest of the time. My job really is to try and push their career to the next level, from whether that's ERLs to LEC or LCS, or whether that's from low tier LEC to higher tier LEC, whatever. I mean, lots of people think of agents perhaps as just kind of contract negotiators and people that are sitting there and doing the legal stuff, but really, while that has been the case for some agencies, that's not how we operate ICM Stellar. It's very much about whatever the player's best interests are. Whether that's around their health, whether it's about housing, working with the team that they're on currently to try and get the best for the player, because ultimately all parties involved, the player, the team, and myself, want what's best for the player, and we want the player to succeed, and that shines a good light on the team, shows a good light on the player, shines a good light on the agency. So very much like traditional sports, which ICM Stellar is in a absolute kind of the richest of veins of the biggest football agency in the world. So really delving into esports, it's continuing their successes in other sports now in esports, with me leading the way in League of Legends.
Yeah, that's great. And it also, you're saying what's in the best interest for your players. I'm guessing that'll also be sponsor deals and things like that.
Yeah. So I mean, it's social media and helping them develop on that side, building a brand around the player. It's commercial deals. So yeah, like you said, like sponsorship deals, whether that like kind of individual commercial deals. To be honest, not too many brands, especially like outside of esports brands, are interested in players at an ERL level very much, unless they've got a kind of big stream following or make a lot of content. So once you get to the LEC level, that's where that comes kind of more into fruition. But yeah, getting the player the best contract, getting the player the best commercial deals, building the player's branding, basically putting this player on a pedestal to really succeed in their career.
Yeah, and I think I saw you announced one player coming on board the other week. Are you able to mention any of the players, or is it sort of behind closed doors?
Javier, or Hava is his alias. He played for Movistar Riders last year. They got to EU Masters semi-finals and won the summer Spanish league, SLO. They won the summer split last year. So he's a very promising AD carry who's my first official signing. There's several conversations going on at the moment that aren't public yet, but I mean, I'm talking to different players every single day, pretty much about the potential to join ICM. And I think over the kind of coming weeks, probably more as we approach off season, I think something else lots of different other agencies do is really they only reach out to players kind of near the off season because they want a paycheck of a contract, right? For me and for ICM Stellar, it's very much about getting the player on board as early as possible, and not only managing them when their contract's coming up to renew or when they want a new contract, but actually all the way through. And that's something that's really important to me, is the personal growth of the player, and hence why we're starting way before the off season started. I mean, this was a early February signing of Javier, and there's multiple players across all ERLs and even some LEC players that I'm in conversations with right now about joining.
And are you enjoying it, Josh, that transition from coach to player agent? I guess
Yeah,
there's some similarities, but a lot of differences.
yeah. I think I miss competition. I miss being able to win games of League of Legends as a team and be partly responsible for that. And I miss. I still have some of that kind of leadership, which I think is a good quality of mine, is being able to like get people to rally around me and work hard for me. So I miss utilizing that as much, but I think as I get more clients, that will still come about. I still have it with Javier at the moment, but as my client base builds, we'll be moving more towards some of that. And I think there's lots of transferables. I think the biggest thing for me is that coaching in League of Legends is a very it's a job where you don't know where you are unless you're kind of a top LEC coach, and even then it's like a couple-year contract, and hopefully you stick that 2 years. But it's a lot of flitting about. You don't know your contract runs out in 6 months, and you don't know where the next paycheck comes in from. You're hoping you get good offers. Sometimes it's not all on you as to why the offer didn't come in. It affects your personal life because you're not in one place. You're not in a position where you're like, okay, this is where I live and everything can come here central. You don't have a central location so much. And then also like relationships, family relationships all get split up temporarily because you're off to London 1 week, you're off to Berlin the next split, you're off to France the next split, off to Spain the next split. You don't really know where you are, and the future is really hard to plan. And when I was at university or kind of just finishing university and I didn't really have many ties, that was much easier. But as we all do, we all get older. I'm going on towards my 30s, and you start to go, okay, well, at what point do I not just take 6-month contracts or 1 year contracts where I don't know where after that 1 year where I'm going to be? I have kind of aspirations of being able to get my own mortgage and just general real life stuff that in esports is difficult unless you get a massive paycheck and can just pay off loads, or you have something really stable. And I've been lucky at points in my career with the likes of Excel to have something stable for quite a period of time. But yeah, it's difficult, and I think this job, they're very flexible with me. They've got an office based in London, but currently I'm working from home with the COVID situation. But they've also said, like, after COVID, it's up to you where you work. You can come into the office and work, or you can work from home and stay at home because that's where your family are, that's where your girlfriend is, whatever the situation. And that's another thing that drew me to working for ICM Stellar is kind of how accommodating they were for my personal situation. They want to see results ultimately, and that's what I want to give them. But really, my base is where I choose it to be. So
yeah, that's really good, and it's the best decade. Your 30s, Josh.
Yeah.
You've got experience. You've got tons of experience. You know what you want to do, what you're good at, and 20s, early 20s is the hard working one where you're still figuring things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us a bit about you as well, Josh. How you got into all this and your background, because you were in esports. Well, before I set up Esports News UK, like you were among some of the first people I wrote about. So yeah, how did you get into it?
So I don't know what year. What year did you first write about me, Dom? When did you set up Esports UK?
I set up Esports News UK late 2015. It was around the time of the Worlds at Wembley.
Right.
So it was September, October 2015. I was around a lot more following gaming before that, but sure. That's when I started doing it.
Yeah, so I was probably playing League of Legends for probably 3 or 4 years before that, kind of season 1, season 2 of League of Legends. I had coaching experience and kind of teaching experience prior to anything esports. Basically, I went on and I did sport and exercise science at college and went into a teaching degree at university. So I'd always been about leading people, trying to bring about new ideas, new ways, figuring out new ways of achieving things. And sport was always a passion of mine. Being an only child and growing up in a very rural area of Devon on a farm, which is, that's where I'm right now. It's quite a solitary life in terms of having connections with other people of the same age. I mean, it's me and my parents that live here, and I mean, I was always welcomed to have any friends around or whatever when I was younger. But ultimately, that drove a bit of a passion for video gaming and games and stuff. Obviously, when the internet came around and came into that, it became a little bit more difficult, because internet in a rural area, I mean, even to this day, I get like 1 meg download speeds or something. So really shocking and really hard to get to a pro level of coaching on 1 meg download speeds, I'll tell you that. But yeah, so my kind of love for video games anyway, on the Nintendo 64, the Sega Mega Drive, and all the old school consoles, and all the way up through came from partly just entertainment at home. So that went through, and I kind of started to merge everything that I liked into what I didn't know was going to be a career. I didn't know at that point. I didn't know I had a clue what I wanted to do. Teaching was kind of the safe option for me. I loved working with younger adults or younger children, and allowing them to learn new things and seeing their growth and development. And that was a passion for me. And then that, alongside sport, I love football. A bit like yourself, Dom, a big Arsenal fan.
Yeah.
So
I forgot you're a good enough. We won the other day, thank God.
We won a game. Yeah. We got away with one. But yeah, I've been a big Arsenal fan, big sport fan forever, really. And I kind of merged all these things. I merged like my love of sports and my love of teaching. I've been coaching children's football teams all the way up to kind of under 16s football teams.
That's great. I didn't know that.
So I brought all of that into a game that I had got into online, which was League of Legends. And I mean, it started with working, as all teams were back then. It was starting with 5 friends. There's 5 people that I was like friends with, and I was not good at the game myself, but I could pick up things quickly and learn things about the game that perhaps even people that could press the buttons quicker than me couldn't see in the same way. And back then it was just beneficial to have someone watch the game that wasn't in the game and be able to just notice things that you did wrong, because when you're playing the game, it's difficult. And it took years and years and years, and I didn't really have much guidance. It wasn't kind of the same resources back then as there are now, but I used what I knew about person growth and how the mind learns and how people learn, to both enhance my own game knowledge and knowledge of League of Legends, as well as kind of start to impart ideas on the people I work with. And I mean, we went from there. The rest is history there. But that's really how I got into coaching in first place.
And it's interesting. So you coached, was it under 14s football teams?
Yeah, I mean, lots of different age groups. I think probably from under 10s, varied from under 10s to under 16s, probably. More recently, I've actually coached adult football teams on the side as well as esports. But back then it was kind of, I was probably in my very early 20s, really late teens maybe, and I was coaching youngsters playing football.
Who would you say is more mature, those under 10s to under 14s football players, or League of Legends teams you've coached?
I think there's been a massive scale. There's a massive there's definitely been under 10s that were more mature than some of the players I'd worked with throughout the years, but there was definitely League of Legends players that were more mature than my under 10s. But including myself, I mean, as we get older, I think we find value in being immature and
absolutely,
actually living in our youth. You know, when we are actually okay with looking silly and okay with looking like the idiot. And it's fine because it's funny, rather than just being so serious about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something I try to do. It's difficult when I'm writing sometimes about serious articles to remain light-hearted, and maybe people don't see that side of me that much. But when I'm with my family, I do like to muck about and be the joker of the house. Absolutely. So that's really good background you've sort of taken us on there, Josh. What in terms of you've told us sort of like why you became a coach. Early days then, because one of the first articles I ever wrote, and I'll see if I edit this back, bring it up, or put it in a link in the descriptions. You coached the women's team at ESWC Paris in like late 2015. That was when I first got to know you, and I was looking for stories and things to write about in the scene. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Going over to Paris.
I think that was probably my first step abroad coaching League of Legends. I'd only coached UK teams, basically trying to qualify, like teams that were trying to qualify for what was back then the ESL UK Premiership of League of Legends, and they were we just failed sometimes. I think some of the teams I worked with just kind of made it into the bottom echelons of that league. And then an opportunity came up. I think it came up when I was coaching TCA back in the day, an old school League of Legends team from the UK.
I forgot you were with them.
Yeah, I worked with them back then, and with the likes of Raisins, who's still around now, and I'm actually kind of helping out a little bit on Munster Rugby Gaming now, or at least guiding them.
Yeah, Deadly was with TCA at some point, wasn't it?
Deadly joined just after I moved to Excel. Deadly joined TCA then with the likes of Yopper and the likes of they had a few different good players at that point. But
Raisins was on TCA as well.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Sorry, you said Raisins. Sorry.
Yeah. Raisins and Deadly with the bot lane, and Yopper, and I think might have even been like Krogson or something. I can't remember now. Yeah. But I mean, a long time ago. And then I got an opportunity. So the AD carry that I was working with at TCA was I think he's around in Overwatch and stuff now, but Ayuki. He used to be a Luke. I can't remember his surname.
Yeah, he went into Overwatch for a little bit, I think.
Yeah,
and I haven't followed him since.
A guy called Ayuki, he was the AD carry at the time for TCA. He had a girlfriend who played League of Legends and played League of Legends to a decent-ish level, and basically she got in contact with me regarding their female team, and their female team was one of, I think it was like 16 invited teams to the Esports World Cup in Paris they had a female League of Legends tournament there, and it was by invite only. They didn't have a coach at the time. They approached me. I went along to that, and we had really fun. I mean, to be honest, it wouldn't be the way I'd like to coach, and as much as I much prefer a long kind of preparation period, it was very like you just dragged into a tournament where you don't really know your players, you don't really know their strengths, weaknesses, and stuff like that so much. But it was a step in the right direction of paid League of Legends, which ultimately we all want to be full-time paid in esports, right? That's the goal for all of us. It starts as a hobby. There's only a certain amount of time that you can go on voluntary or as a hobby until you kind of earn your stripes, I suppose, and then you have to charge for the work you do to continue, or else I mean ultimately you fly the nest and do something new. So it was a very minor step, but it was a step in the right direction of like I've been paid for doing what I do now, so I need to keep on that track.
Who was your first team? Was it TCA then, and how did you get involved?
I think first organized team, like with an actual organization. I think there was teams that were called like GIM. There was a GIM white and a GIM black back in the day that was a kind of made up bedroom org effectively of players that I first worked with, and really because I knew them as friends.
Right.
Thomas Davis Chin, he was one of the players back then on that team.
Yeah.
So there was that was a team I very first worked with, and then I think TCA was probably the first org that officially kind of signed me to them. And by signed, I mean I signed an NDA to say I wouldn't go to a different team, but actually there's no paid contract or anything like that. It was just working alongside their team at the time, and this team was kind of very much the underdog. But I've done a lot of that in my career. I've been very much the underdog in a lot of teams I've been on all the way through, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed not having necessarily the pressure to win the league because you expect to win the league, but actually go and beat teams that you're not meant to beat and show them how it's done. And I think something about coaches that I've noticed is lots of coaches will take the best roster, right, or the likes of the old M&M back in the day, the Manolite M&M roster that I think like my gran could have coached and still won ESL UK Prem, you know, like those rosters were brilliant. Absolutely the best, most talented players in the league. Brilliant players. Exactly. But it didn't really appeal to me too much because it didn't take me to. I couldn't have an influence on them winning the league or not. They would just win it without me. I really liked the teams that I could take. Maybe I joined and they were 8th and I could take them to 4th, or maybe I could join a team that should finish 6th and they finish in the top 3 or 4. Like I found passion in players and teams finishing higher when I left them than when they started, not just joining the best 5 players because whatever. And I mean there was opportunities at different times to join different rosters, and I generally preferred the ones that I felt I could help the most.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, you're taking us back through the years, the UK scene. You've seen a lot. You're probably one of the most experienced UK League of Legends coaches out there, or that's been in the scene for that long and not left it, kind of thing. I mean, you're still
Yeah,
involved
yeah. I
now.
mean, I've gone in and out. I've always been involved. I mean, I remember when I went over to Spain, and we'll talk about the Spain trip in a bit. But I even went over to Spain, and I was showing them, yeah, this is the league I came from, and this is Excel, the org I was working with before I went over there. And I mean, at that point, there was such a huge disparity between the UK's top league and the likes of Spain. When I went to Spain, I was bemused by the fact that there was fans waiting there, like we had about 250 fan queue to sign to do like the team like poster signings and stuff, and all I'd had at home was working on 1 meg download speed internet, playing 5v5 with nobody that gets paid against another 5v5 of friends that never get paid, so there was a big step there, but yeah.
We touched on this recently. I'll try and put this link in the description as well. Eminem Alex Officer Naughty did a talk show recently at the start of the year, and we touched on UK scene and maybe why it's not as popular as other scenes. But do you think it just comes down to the fact that the main English broadcast is the LEC, so the main Spanish broadcast will be that LVP, or do you think it's more than that? Because we do have fans here. Wembley sold out when Worlds came to Wembley.
I think that, I mean, the thing is that there's not one problem. There's a select amount of problems. I think the big boys in the other regions, the big teams, have done a good job at filtering what they've got to create a bigger pie for everyone, with everybody getting a slice, rather than cutting the limbs off and just taking a smaller pie but only for themselves and not giving anything to the rest. I think we've got a problem with developing talent in the UK scene. The last, to be honest, I think back, and I think like who were the last players that kind of forged in the UK that legitimately can go to the LEC, and it's stuff like Deadly, and it's stuff like Shikari perhaps, and Inax, who had a brief stint there with Schalke. But like, these players have been playing, they were playing the UK scene in 2017 and 2016. Since 2017, I don't think we've produced a new League of Legends player that could go on to make the LEC. I mean, maybe Soft potentially.
I was going to say the Resolve lineup, they've got all British. I mean, some of the Resolve experience, like Artorias.
Exactly, and I think there are orgs now that are doing a better job. I think the likes of London, the likes of Resolve are absolutely on the right path to develop talent and become. Not everybody's going to win every league, right? You're not going to get into the NLC and you win it every year and you win a U-Master every year. Without a significant budget, you're not going to do that. But not every team aims to do that. You look at traditional sports and there are teams that aim to stay in the Premier League, but actually their main revenue stream is developing their players and selling them to pastures new. So the likes of Southampton are a brilliant example of this. They develop talent. They know they can't compete bucks wise with the Man Cities of the world, the Manchester Uniteds of the world, but they develop talent, sell it on, and bring another player through in the position. And there's way too much free agency, in my opinion. There's way too shorter contracts, and there's way too just. I mean, all these orgs just lose their assets for free at the end of every split, and then their assets go to the only thing about these orgs that they've really got that they can kind of sell at the moment is the players that are on the roster, but they don't sell them because the contracts run out and then they go to pastures new. And players historically in esports don't like buyouts and stuff because they think it will prohibit them progressing their career. But we need to get to a point where, even if it's for a small fee, that an org recoups at least the money that they spent on a player throughout throughout a split or throughout a season. And this needs to be a revenue stream. The orgs are not smart enough at building revenue streams, or don't have enough people working with them to help them generate revenue, and as a result what they see is an investment that effectively has no return. They spend, I don't know, we'll say hypotheticals, an NLC UK org spends £500 a month on a player or something like that outside of the academies, and I don't know, over a 5-month period they spent £2,500 on each player. And what do they get out of that? Okay, they finished 6th in the NLC or something. And what does that actually return? They returns a bit of money from ESL or DreamHack that are now running that. But ultimately, they're never getting any. There's no progression there. And to progress, they need to have a player that. I mean, you look at the Mad Lions prior to being in the LEC. So this is not like because they're an LEC org they can do this. This was prior to them being in the LEC. In SLO in Spain, they had a brilliant roster. They had a brilliant roster that kind of came out of nowhere, and they put the pieces together. And Aranea over there did a brilliant job of developing that roster. And that roster at the time was Whirlib, Selfmade, Nemesis, Crown Shot, and Falco. With that roster, we're talking kind of rough numbers, but they managed to get like something. I think they managed to get 5-figure sums for 4 of those 5 players that season that were bought by LEC teams. 2019 spring, 4 of those 5 players were bought for 5-figure sums. I think you're talking best part of £1 million that they made, probably out of those 4 players, and then the other player has stayed with them, moved into an assistant coach role, and has now taken over from Aranea as a coach. So the money that they've invested in those players didn't just disappear into thin air. It was actually, I mean, that's an extreme example, right? Because 4 of their 5 went to LEC, but there's no reason why you can't generate one of those, and we don't. Developing talent, I think, is a hard thing in the UK, and I think there needs to be more help from Riot. I think that the org owners need to know what's the player base actually like in the UK, because to me, because there are not immediate teams that they can go to where they can go, okay, I can actually take on a couple of years of doing esports. It's that catchment that needs to improve, right? It's the okay, I'm leaving university, I need to now get a job. And they can choose to play video games to a good level in the UK, but not actually be paid bugger all for it, or they can actually go and get a job, and maybe that starts to consume their time, consume their life, and not have time for esports anymore. But really, we need an avenue in which the people that are good, there is a funnel that they go down. There's a place that they go down that takes these players into giving it basically supports them in their journey towards a professional esports career. A lot of the Korean teams right now are entering into that. Something like Gen G Academy as they've partnered, I can't remember what it's called, something like Elite Colleges or something in America. And effectively what they're doing is they are taking kids at the end of their school life, like kind of 16, 17-year-olds on. They're not playing in a competitive league or anything like that, but they're kind of, it's a bit of like a open university / esports life where they continue an education while are being taught effectively how to be a professional esports player. And from there, ones that finish that come out with a kind of a further education. Ones that finish that and are actually really good at esports go on to join in their esports teams. And there's no reason for me why the likes of the UK LEC orgs, Academy, the Fanatics, the Excels of this world can't utilize their academy systems to better something like that, where they're the ones with the most influence over the country in terms of League of Legends players. They're the ones with the most spending power to be able to set up some kind of academy. Really, we need just a better catchment tool, working alongside Riot, working alongside the teams working together to funnel these any player that shows promise into supported kind of an esports supported route, I suppose.
You mentioned that org that sold some. Was it Mad Lions or was it?
It was Mad Lions, yeah.
Yeah, so they sold players for 5 figures, but then that would have been, that wouldn't have been near $1 million, would it?
Well, it depends on what 5 figure. Well, no, it might have been 6 figures.
$500,000. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I think the likes of Nemesis to Fnatic was. I mean, I don't really want to speculate on numbers, but that was like 6 figures, and I think Selfmade as well was similar. So I mean, it's in the thousands of pounds, right? And in a couple of cases in the lower ends of the hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Right. Okay.
Of 4 of their 5 players. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that these players were probably on maybe £2,000 salaries, 1,500 a month salaries, something like that. And now Mad Lions, all of a sudden, I mean, this isn't why they got into the LEC by any stretch of the imagination. They did lots of deals after that with the likes of Splice and their overactive media and all that, and they merged together and they got an LEC spot. But it grew the foundation of what was a nothing organization to something that's growing. It seems to me that the likes of and they are growing, and I'm not going to put any orgs down, but the likes of the M&Ms of the world, the Barrages of the world, the Enclaves of the world, that have been orgs that have been around as long as I have in esports, and some of them longer, have progressed, but the speed of progression is so slow that the revenue streams that they have coming in are so limited. And it's how can we as a collective either help them, or how can they get better internally at increasing their revenue streams.
Yeah, I remember when you and Alex London Esports were talking on Twitter about this, and you explained to me this, and I thought it was a good idea. Now, actually, orgs like Endpoint have done it over the years, and I guess M&M Gaming with their Rainbow Six players and selling those on.
Yeah.
Endpoint have sold some big players, or Smooya and a few others. And
I mean, could you imagine Arsenal at the end of the season? They just let all their players go on a free agent. There would be uproar.
Well, there has been uproar, hasn't there, with things like Jack Wilshere and things. Arsenal maybe not a good example, but other teams.
But when there's an individual player, there's uproar, right? In like Arsenal. But imagine letting your whole squad go. Like, they all just go, and you've got to get a whole new squad every single season. And it's not even like it's once a year, like it would be in football. It's every they play for 6 weeks, and whatever development you've achieved in 6 weeks now just goes to a different team.
I've always thought that was odd, and I was always, back in the early days of whatever, 4 or 5 years ago in UK League of Legends, people would say, "Oh, Dom, what are you talking about? That's not how it works." But I'm thinking, but that's how it should work, really, if we want to get to a good level.
People get used to what the norm is, and they think that's how it should be, rather than actually, what's wrong with this system? And what's wrong with this system is that because some other org let their players sign a one split deal, then to get those players, you also feel like you need to sign that one split deal with no buyout involved or anything like this. And it just doesn't make business sense at all. That these orgs, at the end of the day, are businesses. I'm not saying they need to sign players for 10 years and lock a player into, if an LEC team wants him, he's got to pay $3 billion to get him out of his contracts. That's mental. But how much you can work out how much you're going to spend on that player over the duration of the contract, and you can go, okay, we want to recoup that and a little bit more so that we could replace the player afterwards, for instance. And then what you do is you I don't know, maybe you had a player on £500 a month, and you've recouped all those £500 plus a little bit extra on top, and you go, okay, well, now we can actually sign a player for that position that we can pay £750 a month, because we actually recouped all that and we got a little bit more, and we could put a bigger buyout in this guy's contract. And we think this guy's got more potential than the last player we had in that role. And you start to build up, but this should have been going on for years now, and it's really just not.
Yeah. Before we move on to your time in Spain and Turkey and so on, I'll just throw some curveball quickfire questions, just because I'm curious, because you've had a lot of experience in the UK League of Legends. What's been your favourite moment in UK League in your time?
Oh, there's been loads. There's been so many. For me personally, achievement-wise, it was winning the league, winning the ESL UK Premiership with Excel. I think at that point it didn't feel possible for Excel. It didn't feel feasible. It always felt like they were the bridesmaid, never the bride, always would do well and never get anywhere. The roster was definitely by no means to be honest, for all the years.
Orcs and Inax won it.
Orcs, Inax. Yeah. And I mean, at that point, every single year almost, it felt like just you knew who was going to win the league before the league even started, right? It was like Alfari Maxwell. No one's going to beat these guys. They're just going to win every game and win the league. And maybe they dropped a game, or maybe they found a game hard, and that was like, oh my god, they found this game really hard. Or then there was the likes of Manalite, and they win every single split. And all of a sudden, there was a team that perhaps wasn't predicted to just outright win the whole league, and they go on and win it. And that felt really good. It felt really good for Excel. It felt like this could now propel to something bigger, which it ultimately did. And it felt like we were a team. I mean, anytime you're in LAN or at an event with people in person, it's always so much more special than
Definitely.
just being at home on your PC. I think that's what makes everything so special, is when you're there and you can enjoy that moment together. And ultimately we did. But then, I mean, also like sitting at home and Excel getting into the LEC when I'd been such a big part of all of the performance for years up until that point, and wrote the performance side of the LEC application. Excel was not meant to get in the LEC. This is an organization that's just not. This isn't a G2. This isn't a Fnatic. This is your standard
it was
UK
a surprise at the time.
No bigger than M&M, no bigger than Enclave, no bigger than Barrage, no bigger than any of these orgs. And people forget that now, right? Because XL is huge. But then it was no bigger than any of the others. It just had a better drive to get to where they wanted to, and people behind the scenes that were doing work really, really well. And I mean, the likes of Kieran was working so hard. The fact that he secured the Omen deal to get the Omen house prior to XL being anything to do with the LEC, just as a standard ESL UK org, was amazing, and that leveraged what could happen next. And that's what I mean, that these kind of revenue streams, whether it's through sponsors, whether it's through selling players, lead to much bigger things for all of these orgs, and there has to be a way of these orgs finding it.
And this is just me being curious. I've played with you a few times, League of Legends. We did a esports thing. What's your role and champion?
So my main role is jungle, really, over the years. When I first started, I used to play mid lane a lot, but I moved into the jungle, and I think some of that was to do with playing on high ping all the time from home. So I'm constantly like 80, 90 ping all the time. And if someone else uses the internet in the house, you get a swift 200, 250 ping, and you click somewhere and your champion reacts 3 seconds later. So that's not been good. So I think jungle, where I can play PvE a lot and just hit creeps, has been something that has helped. But also I just prefer, and I'm probably because I'm better at it than anything else, but I prefer thinking about the game and winning the game through the right calls and the right ideas, as opposed to just like I click my buttons faster than your opponent. And maybe that's just because I'm not as quick at clicking my buttons as my opponent, but actually the whole coaching thing, the whole just me thinking the way I think, has led me to enjoy that role the most, I think.
I'm similar as well. I like jungle, but I also like mid as well, and I've played a bit of support. Come on, who's your favourite champion, Josh?
Kindred, historically. Over the years, it's been Kindred. I mean, I've gone lots of different ones. I always try wacky junglers like Zyra and Morgana and these kind of champions. Loads of different champions I play in the jungle, but they're fun.
Someone picked Talon jungle in the British Esports Championships show match the other day at the collegiate level. What do you think of that? I mean, he does the parkour thing. It makes sense, right, as a jungler to dash in,
it's
dash
just
out.
the speed in which you clear, I guess. I need to see, but I mean, it probably isn't the worst.
Well, people say anything can play anywhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially to be honest, how comfortable you are on a champion, how good you are at a champion makes way more difference than how good the champion is at the lower echelons of play.
Spot on. One I'm curious on, before we move on to your Turkish and Spanish endeavours, who do you think is the most improved player that you've worked with or coached over the years? I guess an easy one would be... Oh, no, you went with... No, you weren't on the team with Larson, were you? So that doesn't count.
No, I wasn't. Who would I say is the most improved? I think he's still got a long way to go in terms of actually showing how good he is. But Shikari, for me, when he first started playing the game, nobody thought anything of him. He was a top laner that would just soak up resources, soak up enemy pressure, not really do too much. And he's still, to this day, after winning back-to-back league after league after league after league, going to EU Masters top 4, still to this day doesn't get spoken about by any of the top teams anywhere all over Europe. If he was an AD carry and he was winning as much as he's won, he'd be in another team immediately, because he's a top laner and because he's not a showy player. He's not like the Cristiano Ronaldo of League of Legends, you know. He's the person that just does a very solid job all the time and understands his role so well. The fact, I mean, people that don't know, Alfari spent a lot of time over the last few years training one-on-one matchups with Shikari because of how well Shikari would understand them and how clear the kind of communication could be between the two of them about improving their matchups. And so Shikari and Alfari worked very closely together over the past few years. Obviously, Alfari is now fled to America, and he's over there with Team Liquid. But in reality, this guy, from what I first thought when I first met Shikari, very introvert, very stereotypical gamer in lots of respects, but is so amazingly talented that he doesn't even know how talented he is.
But do you know what? I'm glad you mentioned Alfari, because I was going to mention him, because Shikari seems to me someone who, he doesn't make any cocky comments. He sort of keeps himself to himself a little bit. But Alfari, back in the day, people might not remember, but when he won those early ESL Prems, he was very young and immature. And he said some outlandish, silly statements. Like, I did an interview with him ages ago, and he was saying it was easier than I thought, to be honest, like things like that. But he wasn't. Yeah. He was still quite introverted and didn't speak much. Even he did a Reddit AMA the other day, and it was just one word, one sentence answers. Yes, they were funny. He's got wit. But he won't write a long detailed thing, or you don't see the personality that much. There's similarities there, isn't there?
I used to not like that style, to be honest, back in the day, because I felt that the people that make it had a responsibility, and they don't really, but I used to feel that they had a responsibility or to at least remember where they came from and help those who are also trying to make it, or where they can. And I've tried to stick to that a lot in my own career. Is like lots of other coaches or players I see get to the LEC or get to wherever, and then they go like, UK scene's rubbish, I don't want anything to do with that, I'm an LEC player. And I was never like that. I was always like, okay, well, you need help, I can help guide you. I worked with Barrage for a period of time after coming out of the LEC to guide what was at that point their head coach, Turok, on how he could develop as a coach, because he was very young. He was something like, I don't know, 18 or something. And I'd been to the LEC. I'd seen what esports life as a full-time coach was like, and I felt I could help people. I don't think it is people's responsibility to do that, because ultimately they've got their own career to focus on. And I think I probably undersold myself at points in my career by dropping down to a level where I probably wasn't even really paid very much, just to help people else in the scene and stuff, which again, I don't think it's people's responsibility, but they don't lots of traditional esports people, I guess, are not big fans of the whole fan engagement thing and on brand, and they're very much like, I just play the game because I like it and I get good at it because I want to win and I like winning, and ultimately that's what drives them is the passion for competition and the passion for being good at what they do. They're not driven at all by how many people say they're good, or what the stuff that people want to hear. They're not interested in that. They're interested in just showing what they can do actually in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Good answers there, Josh. So on your time abroad then, Spain, Turkey, you said you learnt a lot from Spain, G2 Vodafone, right? G2 have their G2 Arctic thing in Spain now as well.
They do now, yeah.
We did an interview with FIS, I think it was, a while back, and that did pretty well. And it's... what are your learnings there? Because there's been a weird link between UK scene and Turkey. We've had quite a few players go out to the Turkish league and come back.
Yeah, Turkish league, Spanish league. I mean, both really. Obviously, G2 Vodafone, I went to Spain for that year, for 2017. That was another very strange one, and something that I'm so glad I did now, but at the time I was apprehensive about doing.
Yeah.
I had never really lived away from home at that point. Even when I was at university, I live about half an hour away from my university, so I used to commute and stuff. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I get someone asking me if I want to do an interview. I didn't apply for any job or anything like that. Someone adds me on Skype. Someone asked me if I want to interview for a coaching job in Spain. 3 weeks later, I'm flying to Madrid. And ultimately, that's where it was at. I mean, I was like, should I go? I had a girlfriend back here at the time. I had a relationship. I wasn't sure where I was going. To be honest, I couldn't sustain just voluntary esports for a long period of time. Mm-hmm. And this wasn't much money, to be honest. It wasn't big money, but it was paid for living. It was paid for costs, and it was full-time esports and full-time coaching. It was the first full developmental project that I felt like I had the chance to do. It was a year-long contract. over in Madrid in the gaming house. We traveled from the gaming house to the office. So Barajas, which is just by the airport in Madrid, just as you fly into Madrid, was where the house was. And then we traveled to the office, which is about half an hour. It was actually a bus ride we were taking at the time, but which is Vodafone's main headquarters in Madrid, a huge big building, but they'd created like a gaming room in there that we trained out of. And I mean, it was a whole new world for me, opened up my eyes on development. To be honest, I was a bit of a yes man back then. I think I was a bit like, okay, this is how it's done, so fine. And I just entrusted the way they did things because to be honest, the players were more experienced than I was in that environment. So if I went back there now and redid that, I would have changed lots of things about the way they worked, the way they trained, the way they developed. But I think it helped me understand a full-time coaching role much better and understand what that meant to actually felt real that this could be a career.
And then Turkey as well, because some people say it's quite a hard league. I think there's some players that went out there, had a tough time. I could be wrong, but I want to say Numlocked, who was in the UK scene ages ago with Choke Gaming, went out there, didn't enjoy it, came back after 2 months. It moved games, but yeah. There
was a lot of dishonesty between various managers, and what a lot of the promises were not able to be fulfilled back in the day. Obviously, the likes of some of the bigger clubs now, the Fenerbahces of the world, the Galatasarays, big football clubs, got involved, big traditional sports clubs. Besiktas obviously is one of those. They started to professionalize things a little bit more over there, and I think it's better now than it was. The standard is good. The players I worked with at the time enticed me to be there, and I saw very clearly the talent they had, but they just didn't have leadership. And they had the likes of Patrick, who's now at Excel. He was called Sheriff back then. They had Closer, who was at 100 Thieves now. He was at Golden Guardians in the LCS last year and went to 100 Thieves this year. And then the likes of Flakshish and some of the others who perhaps didn't go quite as far, but some really talented players. And again, after Spain, after the way that went, I was keen to just keep going, just take what opportunities were thrown at me and run with them. And I mean, this Besiktas gig was only a couple of months job, really. It was a bit of a rescue mission. There's lots of jobs I've had are. They were struggling for how good they should be. They were struggling. They weren't getting into the playoffs of the division that they were in to get promoted to the top division. And I came along and we made the playoffs and we made like top 2. So on that was really good. But another jump and again another weird experience. I mean, one of the scariest things I had out there was the riot offices in Istanbul are like 29 floors up in a like a skyscraper, or 49 floor, I can't remember exactly, really, really high up in the skyscraper. And then there's a massive storm and they were predicting an earthquake, and then the building starts like,
oh god.
And I was like, what the hell do we do in an earthquake like 40 floors up? And all the lights went out, all the computers went out in the middle of an official game in the riot offices. It was just scary stuff actually, and it was all right in the end. Like, I mean, it calmed down, it was fine. But another weird experience I experienced during esports for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I didn't know about that. I know there was one game I watched, I think in the UK League or ESL Premiership or something, where someone had an earthquake and there was a pause because a player had experienced an earthquake.
Yeah, I mean, all 10 went off in this case. So obviously, we're all in the riot offices playing the official game, because that's where the official game's played out there in the studios.
Yeah,
and everything went off. So
gosh, like it's mad. One thing I wanted to ask about, Josh, your time with Excel. You mentioned it briefly earlier, going from like a more bottom tier to mid tier org to that higher level. Obviously, they got the funding. But I was sad to see you leave and John Ellis leave, and Excel, I don't think it's no stranger. There's been a turnover there, you know. There's been people coming and going. Joel left, sadly, he's at Method now, you know. What was that like? And
I think Excel was my fondest times in esports have been with Excel, and probably some of the saddest too, I think. Everybody dreams of getting to the LEC and getting to the tier 1 of whatever esport you're in. Ultimately, my experience at least was cut short. shorter than I would have wanted it to. I mean, I had a 2-year deal, and I saw out like 5 or 6 months of the LEC contract. Prior to that, I loved it. I loved every single part of it. John and I had a great relationship that we still have to this day, and I've made a lifelong friend in John, who has worked and made me a better coach, made me a better person throughout. I worked with lots of different iterations of the rosters. I set up the gaming house. We worked with Omen, which was the biggest sponsorship deal in League of Legends in the UK for quite a long time. I mean, you're talking 6 figures there or something. So brilliant there. Then we worked alongside some of the Direwolves guys when Dave Harris came in and took over at Excel, and we did a bit of stuff with interacting with them and their boot camps and stuff like that. And ultimately, we thought, okay, well, we're the only UK, or there's not that much UK representation in the LEC. LEC was turning from LCS, EU LCS to LEC. There's an application to be made. To be honest, like, we work hard for the year, we make an application, and likelihood is we're not going to get it. And but does it cost that much, to write the application, put in the hard work? We did it. And John and I sat down extensively at length. And to be honest, that iteration of Excel, the kind of Excel summer 2018, that again, like maybe people say, like, we got knocked out in semis by Misfits, who ultimately went on to win it. But people see the short term and the result there. But what they don't consider is that John and I, while coaching that team and trying to develop the team best we could, we're writing an LEC application all the way through that split, and the team's suffering because we're spending time on that, and there's things that they don't. There's so many things about every team that, like, the reasons they're failing. I mean, we'll talk about Munster in a bit, but Munster last year, like, how good that roster was and how much it suffered because of the external circumstances. And people look at, like, oh, they're just playing badly, or this player's just not very good anymore. But there's so much more about the way a team performs than just, like, because he's playing well or he's not playing well.
This is it. And you see it in sports too, right? Things, you don't know what's going on behind closed doors.
You know, such a limited thing, and that's why, like, public perception and the public criticism of players and stuff is so hard to get right. And I mean, you're always going to criticize players because you pay, like, in football stuff, you're paying to see them play, right? So you expect a certain standard, but there's so much more to it than just being able to turn up every week and give 100%. There's so many things going on that influence the way a player plays, and this was all the way through Excel. Yeah, we're humans, right? We're not robots. You don't just sit them down at the computer and say, okay, this is how we're going to play, and they just play it. It doesn't work like that. You can do exactly the same thing 100 times, and like all 100, they're very different, and we got that a lot at Excel, and that iteration, summer 2018, definitely suffered because there's a lot of time being spent on an LEC application. We still got top 4, we still did very well, but everybody's like, oh, you're in a gaming house, you should be winning. Is that investment worth it? Blah, blah, blah. And again, in traditional UK fashion, rather than saying, look how good Excel's doing, they've got a gaming house, they've got a team, they've got Noble chairs, provide chairs, they've got Omen providing PCs, rather than saying, like, oh, we want to copy that, there was a lot of the same stuff that goes on right now, which is someone achieves something and then everybody else goes, oh, they're so bad, they've got a gaming house and they're still not winning, or they've got this and they don't try and emulate success. They try and drag success back down to being back at the kind of floor level again, rather than learning from each other. There's no point in 10 orgs that are all stood in a playground bickering with the other group in the playground, but ultimately you're all in the playground. So let's get out of the playground, let's actually go somewhere with this, you know what I mean? It's like the year 7s saying the other group of year 7s, like, look at his shoes, they're rubbish, I got the new trainers, like, who cares, you're all stood in the same playground. And that's really where we need to get to. We need to appreciate the success of other orgs around us in the UK and build each other up rather than tear each other down. But anyway, tandent over, back to Excel. Back to Excel. LEC application all went brilliant. Never expected to get it, not in a million years. I did scouting grounds throughout that year. That was initially my kind of concept in the UK, and I did one on my own that was separate to Excel. And then Excel supported one in 2018.
I think I did one supported one, didn't I, or two back in the day?
No, I think that was the previous one. That was the first one that I did. I didn't have any support at all. It was just me. It's just an idea. I thought, how can I bring players onto the scene? Like, I mean,
did really well.
I had no money, nothing to provide it with, and we ended up running a scouting grounds from the Belong in Bristol. I got some casters along. We paid for, I mean, your support, Dom, out massively on that. We paid for an Airbnb for the night for the casters or whatever.
Hotel I paid for, didn't I, or something, and you called it an Esports News UK scouting ground. Maybe I'll try and put the link in that below, because that was fun.
So that was brilliant, and that's the start of something that you see now today. That now you've got the likes of Resolve doing open tryouts for their UKAO Academy, and they're doing kind of a scouting grounds for it, or London are doing a scouting grounds for it, and you're seeing concept ideas turn into something bigger, and that's exactly what we need to do and where we need to go. So we did that. That worked. Then Excel supported the next one. It was kind of the Excel's UK scouting grounds, the following year. Then we obviously got the amazing news in November of 2018 that Excel has been accepted. Well, I mean, okay, there's a background to this. Riot phones us and says, okay, if you can get whatever 20 million together and the people you need within this amount of time, you're in the LEC. And it's like, I mean, by this point, loads of the players had already been signed or been talking to teams for months. We were very much like the last to know about this. This was late November, and Excel, comparative to the other LCS turning into LEC teams, had nothing. The LEC, the Omen House was not possible. That was going. So Excel didn't have a facility, didn't have any players, needed to have an academy team, an LEC team, staff to staff both, and a place for players to live, play out of in Berlin as well as play out of in London, all in what, 2 months, something like this. So how is that possible? And again, going back to why did XL LEC in 2019 spring perhaps not do so well? And ultimately it's because nothing was set up. We wanted it. We had loads of great ideas, and so I'm not taking all the blame away from me as to why things went wrong, but the ideas that we wanted to put in place were not able to be put in place. For instance, Expect or Dayhan, we got them on the team. Brilliant Coop had won multiple LCSs with G2 prior, joins us, couldn't get a UK visa. The initial plan, as you know, was 10 players in England. The 5 LEC, they would scrim all week. I would pick the 5 best to be on the LEC stage. They would come with me to Berlin that weekend. We'd play in the LEC. The guys playing in the UKLC at that time were staying back in England, and they were playing that. We'd have 10 interchangeable players, a bit like football, where you have a squad and this competition for places, and that's what I wanted to drill. The fact that Dayhan or Expect couldn't get a UK visa. He got a German visa because he played there before and lived there before. Couldn't get a UK visa. It took to the end of spring split, to be honest. So what happened was that we had to take the 5 LEC players that were initially 5 LEC players and the 5 UK players. They stayed in the UK, and we had to split them, which was completely against the plan. And then when I did change players, like the likes of Kasing, I swapped him out for Mystiques and brought Mystiques in, or I brought Special in for Exile at that time. It felt really bad because I'm sending players on their own on a flight back from Germany to England to join a team that they don't really want to join because they don't want to get up. Kasing had never dropped down to academy. He hadn't really played in the ERLs for years at that point. He didn't want to go to the academy. Of course he didn't. But I had to make a choice that was best for the org, and best for the team, and the best for the team's success. And it was never the intention that it would be that bad and that rough that someone had to get a flight on their own back from Germany to England. But because of the circumstances of one of the LEC team's players didn't have a UK visa, he couldn't live and work from there. So we took the whole team there. I mean, we could have just left Expect in Germany on his own and had 9 players in England, but that felt bad too. So we split it into 2 teams, and maybe I shouldn't have done as many swaps as I did, but it was a philosophy that I believed in and the other staff believed in, and something we wanted to stay true to. And other stuff, like we couldn't get a chef in time that could work with the team and stuff like that. And as a result, like XL provided a food budget, and all the players were just scramming fast food for 5 months straight or something, 4 months straight. Because I mean, you're talking like 20, 25 euros a day, and they would just buy what food they wanted. And to be honest, it was kind of unhealthy conditions. And I was obviously the initial plan with XL was very much, look, however you do in the first split is a better than split. We're trying to get things set up. You do what you can do. If you don't finish bottom, great. We didn't finish bottom. We finished 9th. Right, we beat every team apart from the top 4 at some point in that some point in that season, and I was quite happy with the team's performance. Ultimately, the bar changed So the investors and such were very much on the board of, you can just do what you want in the first split, do your best, bed in, next split will be better. As long as each split's better than the next, we're happy with the growth. It got to the end of one split and the bar changed. Other teams are winning. We need to win. Sorry, you're out. New coach. And that felt really bad at the time. I felt absolutely devastated, to be honest, with the loads of the stuff that went on. Kieran, even in a chat with just me and him, Kieran Homestar with this, is basically called me Excel's Theresa May at the time. In the sense of whoever was in my role would have been the whipping boy and would have exactly. Kind of had the one out the door, because ultimately it's the situation that was so difficult. And again, it definitely wasn't my best split by any means, but I don't think anybody that worked with that iteration of Excel, players, staff, anyone, had their best split during that split, and that was because of the conditions that we were faced with at the time and how short a period of time we had to set anything up.
I get the impression as well, there's a lot of pressure on Kieran and forces behind him that are pressuring him to make changes. Do you think you would have been removed as coach if there wasn't investors and things?
I think Kieran would have stuck with me forever, to be honest. I think he's very loyal. He'll always do what's best for Excel. But I think for a long time before that, he thought I was best for Excel, as he trusted in me for the 2 years previous, and entrusted in me enough, and had seen what I'd done enough over the previous 2 years to get in the LEC to actually give me the LEC head coach job. So, I don't think that if it was Kieran's choice, I don't think that would have happened. Ultimately, as the orgs grow, as the brands grow, you lose control of your what was your own business effectively, because other people have bigger pieces of the pie that they can push weight around, and they can change the bar. The sad thing is that those people, while they have a lot of the money and a lot of the investment, don't always know what's best for the growth of the team, the development of the team, the development of winning in the esport. Their solution, as we see in lots of traditional sports, is how much money do you need to win? Can we bring in?
It doesn't work.
How much do we need to get young buck? Which they've got right now. And I'm sure Joey's a brilliant coach, and no disrespect to Joey at all. Absolute brilliant coach. But you look at something like Rogue, they finished 10th in that split and didn't look like a hope in hell of winning a game. I think they won one game in that split. They've still got the same coaching staff now as they had then, and they finished first in regular split last split.
That's
so
really
over the course of that 2-year spell, that same coaching staff developed what Rogue was from a 10th place team to a first place team. And I truly believe that with the right guidance and the right group, Excel could have done a very similar thing. So it's really hard to judge. The same, like I said, the same coaching staff, the likes of Freddie and Blumigan did a brilliant job in turning Rogue from a 10th place team to a first place team. Yes, they changed members on the roster, they changed things around, they developed the way they were going to work. But Rogue was one of the comparable orgs to Excel at the time. They were new to the LEC, new to the league, had to set a lot of things up. We finished above them in 2019 spring. We beat them twice, I think, maybe once, maybe twice, can't remember, but we definitely beat them. We beat them the first week of the season. For me, it felt like we could have that same trajectory, providing trust was put in the right people, and that some people were removed, some people were brought in, whatever. But it wasn't. And with Excel, it was more of a, we need a quick fix right now. How do we win the league next split? Or how do we get to playoffs next split? And what happened was, ultimately, they did worse in the next split than the first split, and they're constantly restarting the process rather than building on the process they've already got. And I mean, maybe now, because Joey's Joey and because Youngbuck's Youngbuck, they stick with him, because who are you going to get if you don't have Youngbuck? Who do you get? I mean, maybe Grabs or Mac at Mad Lions. There's not many more upgrades you can get in terms of who's won the most things. I mean, there aren't any upgrades in the West for who's won more things. So it's now he has the trust, because he's won those things in the past, that he can stay there for a long time. And I'm sure Excel in the end will achieve what they want to. And especially for me, it's about building on something. And if you tear it down every single split, a bit like what we were saying earlier about the ERL teams having to just lose all their players and start again, a bit like that. I mean, of course, sometimes the house is being built in the wrong way and it's got flaws to the original plan, right, or whatever. But there has to be growth and building for me, as opposed to just starting again every single time that it doesn't work.
Yeah, I completely agree. Is there anything more you want to touch on Excel before we move on to Munster stuff? Because I'm conscious we've gone over an hour, but this is all really insightful. Josh, I could go on another hour listening to you. Absolutely.
No, that's fine. I don't think so. I think we can leave it there with Excel. I mean, it was the best time of my coaching career for sure. Of course, there were some lows, and it's easy to forget about those lows. But ultimately, it's the best org I've ever worked for as an esports team, and there's brilliant people there behind the scenes that are very passionate and very driven. But I really do think that with some of the departures that you saw, the likes of Alex Harris, the likes of John Ellis, the likes of even Grant going
Boaster.
kind of, Boaster, exactly. And I mean, Boaster's brilliant, right? But there's some brilliant people that I think for orgs taking that same path in the future, there are people that would be at that org if they weren't paid a penny and really care. And those are the ones that you need to cherish and look after, because no matter what happens, they have the org's best interest at heart, and they're people for a paycheck. And it's deciphering the difference. Of course, you can get so much more out of those people that really care and will do it for the love of the organisation and the love of the growth of the what they believe in.
It makes me wonder. Fnatic's Valorant team could have been Excel's Valorant team. I'm sure Boaster would have had chats with Kieran or whatever, possibly. We'll never know. But you've given us a lot of insight there, Josh, and it kind of backs up my view of Excel as well. That they've done very well and grown a lot, but now there's the other pressure there now, and there will be turnover at Excel, in my opinion, because
with money becomes a need to win, right, and becomes an expectation that grows and grows and grows, and there's different ways you can go about it. I think there's a rogue route and there's an Excel route, and I think one's shown it works very well in the last time. And I mean, Excel are progressive, but it's slower. Even though they're pumping in more and more money all the time, it's slower.
On Munster, then, I'm sure people watching this will know the situation, and if they don't, I'll put a link to a few in the description below for a few bits that happened. But Josh, has everyone been paid now? Because the last I heard, there was still a few that hadn't.
As far as I understand, there are still outstanding payments. Those people will never get that payment, in my opinion. I don't know if this is true. So this is completely what I heard was that Feeling Gaming went into like administration or liquidation or something like that. So that's what I understood. That's not been confirmed by any legal source or anything like that. That's just hearsay.
Well, they seem to be completely dormant at the moment, so
they've disappeared. They've disappeared. Now, I mean, it didn't. It doesn't take much to think that an organisation with zero money having to pay out the money that they paid out to cover the costs that they didn't pay all of last year would put them in that situation. So logically, that makes sense. The sad thing is, I mean, I don't whether I can mention certain names or not, but I think the people that didn't get paid, there's one person in particular I know hasn't received a penny, and that's because he was Kieran Walsh's friend from Phelan prior to all this. Because he's his friend, he didn't feel so obliged that he had to pay him, because he didn't have so much leverage on social media, didn't have so much leverage on Twitter, worked in kind of operations as opposed to kind of front of house stuff, and as a result hasn't received a penny. And has been on the bare bones of his arse because of this, and it's absolutely shite, to be honest. I mean, I obviously when I was going through all the proceedings, I had to be very careful what I say, and we were all trying to get paid effectively, and that's why it took so long to come out, and I'm sure everyone can understand that. But again, the players received so much slander for last year, like Maxwell's washed up, or Shikari's not as good as they say he is, or Heaver is this, Heaver is that, and there were so many things behind the scenes that these players had to cope with that I cannot commend them enough that they didn't just walk out of the league, because ultimately they had every single right to. They had every single right to say, I'm not playing for you anymore. You're not upholding any of the bargains that you said. And I felt responsible, right? Because I was the one who convinced these players to sign for Munster and to sign to work with me. That I went to Maxwell and I said, look, this is a project that I hope you would be interested in. I want to work with you. I want you to be our jungler, so on and so forth. And I went to all these 5 players, and we got a brilliant roster, absolute brilliant roster who I felt massively about. And Munster themselves also, I think, given the right time, given the right deal, would also be the same. But in reality, they never got a chance. It was being run by someone who was not competent at even making his own bed, let alone paying the organisation. You know what I mean? Really, And we all got kind of blindsided to it because we love esports, we love competing, we love winning things. The team did their best they could, but motivation was really, really high at the start. John and I taught some of the UK's best upcoming kind of coaching staff talent. So Wise Traveller is an LEC analyst, by the way. I really 100% do believe that he should be in the LEC and should go to a team. He's not known about by LEC orgs and stuff because you don't really see staff's work unless you work with that staff member. And Wise Traveller is absolutely brilliant at what he does.
Yeah.
Reclamation, another coach who's up and coming. And John and I basically imparted what we worked on at Excel and what we'd learnt at Excel on some of the other staff to try and guide them because they showed a lot of promise and they're brilliant. And we had a great staff team.
I was going to say, I was really impressed.
Job with the academy.
Yeah.
And we tried to do the best we could with the main team. Obviously, the academy were not so affected because one, that their salary was tiny in comparison, but equally, they're very much in the early stages of their esports journey where they're happy to do it as volunteers because they love it and they just want to do it for good. But the likes of Maxwell and stuff who have been on LAC salary, Misfits and stuff like that. There is a motivation in it being your job as much as the motivation that really is there to drive. The drive is there to compete and win. You're doing it. You're providing your service to a team for a purpose as well, and that is your main bread and butter of winning games. Everything that's paid for, your food bills, your mortgage, your rent, whatever it is, comes from esports at that time. And when all of a sudden that gets cut off by someone, for no reason. There's no explanation as to why that would happen. There's no explanation as to when it would change. We just got lie after lie after lie till the point with the split's over. Where's our money? Well, it's all bollocks.
It didn't have any sponsors about the whole way through. A single sponsor. Nothing. I mean, there was such a great. For me, it was frustrating because it seemed so exciting at the start because Munster Rugby, one of the top Irish rugby sides, are getting into League of Legends and they're going to be playing in this league. And now they've signed Max Law. Like, I was getting really excited for it. I didn't know all this stuff going on. And then I started hearing rumours and things. And then
we were exactly the same internally as well, Dom, to be honest. What we believed is that Munster would fund the startup of Munster Rugby Gaming. And in the longer term, Feeling Gaming would be introduced to kind of Munster's partners. They got partners with like the Bank of Ireland and various different sponsors that Munster have got, as well as building on their own kind of esports sponsors to actually have a revenue stream in the longer term. So it's meant to be a long-term project, and I think Munster still have a long-term project that they really want to push on with. And I think all credit to Munster because they could have said like, F esports, we're off. We've seen enough of this playground industry to not want to be involved anymore. But they've gone, look, no matter what's happened, yes, this was stupidity on our part, or maybe oversight on our part, that we thought that this person was capable of running the esports division. We're actually going to take it on ourselves, not knowing anything about esports, but knowing enough about business that we're happy to. I mean, not happy, but we're willing to take the double relegation that they got right down to the UKL, where they had to apply. And thankfully, the UKL is a brilliant place for development or startups in UK League of Legends right now. Have accepted Munster, and Munster aren't doing great in that, but it's only a matter of time before this organization, in my eyes, is one of the top UK ones, because they've got, one, the drive to do it, two, the resources to do it, and three, they've got a passion for developing local talent. They want to build the Irish scene up, and that's even smaller than the UK by quite a significant margin. They're really keen to develop that. So all credit to them, but it didn't help us obviously last year in the disaster year that we had. And there was a lot of points for me and lots of other people that were working on Munster at that point, that after Excel, after everything that went on, it was like, is it worth it? I mean, the Excel thing ends, opportunities dry up a little bit, you get into Munster, brilliant opportunity. This felt like the new Excel for us. This is somewhere we can go that we can move forward with, and all you get is effectively a year of being scammed. So it felt at that point, okay, well, now I might actually need to go and reconsider my career and do something different, because I need a stable income.
Yeah. I've got to say, talking to you now and hearing all this, Josh, I get the impression yourself and John Ellis have got to be two of the unluckiest coaches in UK League of Legends, because when you look at if someone was to bring up LOLpedia or Gamepedia, a site like that, and look at your resume and your teams on there, they'll see a bunch of different teams. They'll see, we finished 9th with Excel. Oh, Munster. Oh, that nightmare they had there. None of this was your doing.
Yeah, I mean, like there's always bits that everybody could do more, right? And I don't want to paint a picture like we did everything that was absolutely possible, and every single time that the team failed, and I mean every single split I've learned more. Oh, actually, last split I could have done this a bit better, and I think that's part of being in any position where you develop other people. You have to be a lifelong learner and willing to change, adapt, and develop what you do and the way you do it to become better at what you do. And any competitive industry is the same, but there's lots of extenuating circumstances around us that have caused the journey to be hard and different. But ultimately, that's why you keep going. You keep going for like the pastures, greener pastures, or whatever, for that break that gets you there. And we thought that was the LEC at the time, and then we thought it was Munster at the time, and whatever. These things happened, but you really don't know the value of great staff until you actually just see them in operation. And I mean John is a brilliant example of that. Someone who isn't on social media very much, isn't talked about by anyone on Twitter, isn't really known about what he does behind the scenes, but does a brilliant job, and I couldn't fault him at all.
But he seems to be enjoying what he's doing now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He had a brilliant split with Godsent. He just missed out on playoffs, but I mean, this was a roster that everybody pitched as like bottom of all their tier lists, and he's really pushed for playoffs for that team. And again, it's one of those, right? It's one of those that we don't really like, which is a 5 week, 6 week, whatever development split, where you develop those players into something that you'll reap the results long term, but long term those players are in different places and not with you anymore. And again, a downfall of esports really, but the way it is.
Yeah, 100%. My Alexa went off. People might have heard that there and been summoned by the family. But Josh, this has been really insightful. I think initially I was going to do this focusing on the player agent stuff, and I will do, but you've given me an inside story at Excel and Munster as well that I think a lot of people will be interested in. We're at a point now where that stuff is in the past and you're able to talk about it a bit more.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate it. Is there anything else I might have missed, or anything you want to add?
I don't think, not really. I mean, the agency stuff I think is what is current, so really important to me. And I think ICM Stellar is a brilliant agency and somewhere where I believe down the line, I mean, I'm going to hire other agents or work with ICM Stellar to hire other agents who work alongside me in the League of Legends division.
Yeah.
And I think it's inevitable that something as successful as ICM Stellar have been in their sports. I mean, Jonathan Barnett, who's the founder of one of the founders of the Stellar Group, he's like Gareth Bale's agent, and they've done huge, I mean, world record-breaking deals. They represent like Jack Grealish and stuff like this at present. So
can they bring him to Arsenal?
In the books. I did query that, Tom, but I mean,
because he likes Arsenal.
Right now, in the agency world, I'm a very small fish in a big pond, so I'm starting at the bottom really. But I'm working with players' best interests at heart, not money at heart. To build myself a long-term career that's not 6 months at a time, and you lose all that after 6 months.
Yeah.
While also being able to continue my passion, which is develop players and guide players on a journey that maybe I help them in some of the mistakes that I made in my career or decisions that I made. I want to put players in the best teams possible, the best places that I think that they can grow and develop as players. And I want to be known by orgs around Europe, around the world, even as if we want upcoming talent, go to Josh. If we want players, if we're thinking about replacing X player in our roster, Josh will know who the best person is to replace that. And I want to be, that's my aim, is really to be known as one of the top League of Legends agents out there that is the best at bringing through the new talent to the top teams.
And we should talk as well, Josh, because I've launched an esports consultancy. I'm having brands and other people in business approaching me, and some will be wanting to know who up-and-coming players are. I'm working with someone at the moment on a similar thing with influencers, so just give me a shout.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we say hi around that. But Josh, thanks. It's been an absolute pleasure. I could, like I say, I could talk to you for another
Yeah,
hour or 2 hours,
too.
and maybe we do this, we do something else another time. It's been really insightful, but yeah, I'm being summoned by the family.
That's fine. Understood.
So thanks for your time, and
Thank you very much.
everyone watching this, thanks very much for watching. As always, I'll be back next week with another interview. Please follow Josh, ICM Stellar Esports. I'll put links in the description as always. And thanks again for watching, everyone, and thanks for your time, Josh. I'll see you all soon.
Guys. Thank you very much, Tom.